welcome to the podcast of the impossible. I'm Peter Wood, and my guest today is a fellow showman and Halloween enthusiast. I'm talking today with my good buddy, Brian Garner. We have not talked enough on this podcast about Halloween. It's been all magic stuff and then occasionally related. So I am so excited to have you here chatting
Me too.
Halloween stuff. We're gonna mix it up. I should have worn like a Haunted Mansion shirt today or something.
It's all good.
Talk to me about Halloween. What's
Oh gosh.
what does it for you?
When you say that, there's probably compared to the other podcasts that we did, the smile on my face is completely different.
Sure.
That is a passion that I have had since I was a little kid. That has I think it's gotten worse.
Yeah, sure.
I see worse in such a good way. Oh gosh, Halloween. I look at Halloween the way that most people look at Christmas.
Okay.
I love Christmas, but there's just something about Halloween. There's something about that uneasy feeling to me that is so just wonderful.
Right.
But it's not just that. It's what we talked about in a previous episode. It's the theater of it. It's the backstage part. Watching old videos of like Dick Smith doing makeup and that stuff just gets me so excited. I don't know. It definitely brings out the childhood. That's that nostalgia from when I was a child. But my childhood with Halloween was different than a lot of other children. So, and it was a very good thing. But yeah.
Well, tell me about that. Like, what was Halloween like growing up for you?
So, the negative part, I really didn't trick or treat.
Okay.
The positive part was because I was working in my dad's haunted house. Ever since I can remember, there was always a haunted house at our house.
Okay.
It started off really small, where there was like a little section of our front yard that they would tarp up, and it was like a little U-shape maze. That was all it was.
Okay.
And I would get to be part of that. We couldn't afford like all these Halloween costumes. Plus, it wasn't as easy to get the Halloween costumes. So my parents would use old like graduation robes, and you really learn how to use spray paint, to its best. Mm-hmm. And you'd have on a really cheesy Zagoni mask, and not saying Zagonis are cheesy, but back then they're a little bit different. Anyway,
yeah.
So I was always a part of it, and to see people get scared but then laugh,
Right?
like that's a crazy experience, to be a part of, And you don't get that like you do other stuff. Like you'll get it when you watch a scary movie at a movie theater, but that feeling that they get, the adrenaline or whatever happens in watching someone get scared at a haunted house is so much fun. And it's not being a jerk like, oh, you scared them, It's
right.
The fact that you see them scream and then laugh, and like I don't know. So as a child, I was always in haunted houses, and they kept getting bigger. So it would start from these little parts to the side of our house, then to the backyard.
Mm.
Then one year, I think this was the last year. It was the last year we did it at our house. My dad said, "You know what? We're going to bring him through the house."
Oh, nice.
And my mom wasn't happy, so we had a split foyer. Well, what my dad did, he put plastic down and he brought in dirt and filled the entire top
What?
of our house with dirt. So, just because you have plastic down doesn't mean that it's easy to do.
Oh man, that's commitment, man.
My mom came home from work one day and there was dirt and mulch all over.
Wow.
Weird, you're used to walking up these stairs every day, but now you're walking stairs with dirt on them. So it got really big, and all the money that we would make would go to Children's Hospital.
Okay.
So it went from doing it at our house to doing it at the rec center where we lived in our community. And by the time when we finally finished doing it, the years that we did it, because we did it up to when I was a young teenager.
Okay.
We had I want to say it was around like 110 people that volunteered at my dad's haunted house.
Wow.
So it was a good size haunted house, but
Yeah.
we worked on it all year round. And as a child, it was really cool for me because my dad and my uncles were asking me for my advice. And I'm like I matter?
Yeah, sure.
So,
That's cool.
being able to take, some aspects of, of magic, but, and and put that into a scare was like, it was the best thing ever. And I
Right.
think that's part of it, of why I like it, is that it's kind of the best of both worlds, right? So yeah, I mean that's kind of how mine was a little bit different. So that's why I get, like we just got out of Halloween, a couple months ago, and now, we're just back to normal life, but I'm still thinking about like what's my display going to be like for next year, or what,
Right. Right.
just different stuff.
Yeah, no, I hadn't. I mean, just as you're talking about it, it sort of just occurred to me for the first time, like, the a lot of young people, one of the thrills that they get from doing a magic trick for someone older is that you're not used to that experience of knowing something that an older person doesn't know, or tricking or fooling them, and especially if their reaction is not to be pissed off at you but delight,
Right.
that you were able to do that. What you're describing as a kid with giving someone a scare is totally the same rush for you. Like it's so, I hadn't really thought about how empowering that is as a kid to be like, not just scaring your peers, but scaring adults. And whether it's actually you jumping out and yelling boo, or whether it's you creating something that made them cling to each other, like all of that is just a really interesting sort of different power dynamic that you don't get a lot of as a kid, but it's fascinating. So this is all happening sort of concurrently with your magic and performing, and then I guess, dude, what because I did haunted house stuff, in my parents' backyard as well. What
Wait,
sort
wait,
of
wait, 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 wait. You say it just like that. Okay. People don't understand unless they can find these old videos, which I'm so thankful for. These were things that you shared with me.
right.
I was so blown away when Peter says that he did a little something. It wasn't. Yeah,
Well, yeah, no,
an amazing experience.
I'm trying to think. I mean, yeah, it was a different scale. At its peak, it was tractor rides through the woods, like hay rides basically, and only I think we maxed out at like 9 or 10 people in this little wagon. Like it was not that scale, but there was definitely, I think the busiest year, where we would do a thing for, it was like, 8 or 10 nights in October, and having, I don't remember the, dozens of people, maybe knocking on 100 for each of those. So a good, many hundreds of people going through it, at its peak. And same thing, actually, we would, put out a donation jar, and we were, just anything that people wanted to put in, we were donating to the Ronald McDonald House, and just that way, something good came out of it beyond just the fun of putting it together. So for me, what made it end, and then I'll pose the same question to you, but I was starting to have this problem between, well, two things. One, I wanted to keep outdoing myself year after year, and not just like when in the end, it was a completely different theme and story every year. And so what that meant was a lot of the stuff that I had built in years past, I could reuse some things, but a lot of the stuff was sort of, I'm going to put all this effort into it. We're going to use it for this October, and then it's gone, almost like just a theatrical production. And that always kind of bothered me, because like, oh, I'm putting all this effort into it, and then we're not going to be able to use it next year because it's off theme. But also I was starting to have conflicts with my magic performing career, where October is a busy month for a magician. And when I was having to turn away gigs to be at home doing this walkthrough for free. I mean, again, for a good cause, but nevertheless, not helping me to put money in my pocket. That's kind of when I officially pulled the plug and said, like, all right, this was fun. I'll continue to have a Halloween party, but we're not going to go to this level anymore, because magic is more important. I want to talk more about, you were doing this haunted house with your folks as a kid, and then you sort of transition, like, now you're a homeowner and you've got like a place where you can have decorations set up. What sort of started that? Like, I assume you took a break during late teenage, early 20s years, and then like did you do any decorating before you had a place of your own, or how did that work?
Um, well, I mean, at our first place that my wife and our son, where we lived,
Ah,
we started doing a little bit of stuff, and it wasn't honestly until there was a Spirit Halloween store that opened,
okay,
because there wasn't anywhere locally. I'd go to Barry's Magic Shop and buy stuff.
right,
But that was really it. So the Spirit had opened up, and we brought Gavin in there when he was really young, and we noticed he wasn't scared of anything, especially like what are they known for? Like they're jumping spiders,
yeah,
and so we started buying stuff. We'd go there, the day after Halloween when everything's 50% off or whatever it might be.
yeah,
So we buy our first, animatronic, and we're like, wow. So we started introducing it slowly in our house every
okay,
year, and then my wife wanted to, she was like, well, let's do something outside. So then I think I started, our where we lived, we had an acre in the back, around an acre in the back, but in the front, no one seemed in the street that we lived on. No one really decorated anything. So I'd make like a little scene. And then each year I'd bring in another scene, and then I'd start really incorporating lights and different. Then next year playing with audio and throwing people off with that. So then it came time. We always wanted to do a Halloween party, but our friend's excuse was, really don't want to spend the money on the outfit because when I take my children trick or treating, I'm not dressing up.
yeah,
So
yeah,
so we came up with the Garners after Halloween. Say after Halloween Christmas party, after Halloween party,
okay,
and so all of our friends could buy their costumes at a discounted price.
oh, that's great, yeah, yeah,
When we started doing that, I was like, well, now this allows us to use this room that we have in the backyard. So I'd make like two scenes.
okay,
And that turned into, I think, probably like around 8 different scenes that we end up doing. And we noticed that people were kind of just going through the yard. So then we'd have people that would actually be live actors, just during the party that would just sit in a scene that for an hour did not move. And people thought that was just, it was a mannequin figure.
ah, that's great,
And then they would get up and just scare the crap out of people.
yeah, yeah,
So it was each year it just started building and building to be I guess a bigger thing for me. But the more I did it, the more that my wife, she'd get excited about it, and our son would get excited about it, and it turned into a family. It was a family thing, like the decorating, because you know, I'd say like around maybe June, July, we started talking about ideas, different things we would do.
right.
But then in September, we'd start, the little building of things. And that way by October, everything was up because we wanted to be able to enjoy it for a month.
Right, right, sure. Yep.
Because, unlike Christmas, like Christmas, you can keep up for a couple weeks. Halloween, you kind of need to get it down right away.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, true.
I still haven't learned that, my neighbors now probably. Like, I won't, after Halloween, I won't run the fog machines.
Oh, that's yeah, yeah, but that's more financial than efficiency.
Yeah. So every year it just kept building up, and then learning different ways, and thankfully, for all these DIY things that are on YouTube, we learned how to
Sure.
make things on a budget. So that definitely helped.
Right.
But the entertainment career, because that was it was never a full time job for me. I always had a full time job. That money helped out with that addiction.
Right. Right.
So,
Okay.
so we just kept growing and growing with it.
Yeah, the one magic is feeding Halloween, but then yeah, and I also think, I mean, it's fun to think about. I don't really know what it is about Halloween. Maybe it's just a cultural thing, but like I don't I don't feel the need to set up a walk-through Christmas display,
Hmm.
and I don't know why. I mean, I don't know how much of it is just the scare element, or is it just like a thing you do, but there's something interesting about, I love Christmas and I love decorating for Christmas, but it's a different kind of decorating. It's not, you're not, we keep talking about like scenes, but like that's the best word to describe it, where like for Christmas, I feel like you're sort of doing an overlay on stuff that you already have, whereas Halloween is like for setting up a graveyard with skeletons in your yard. And I mean, obviously people still, they'll set up a sleigh with reindeer in the yard, or, you know, a yard full of inflatables, but somehow that's a different kind of thing. And I don't really know why one has taken off and not the other, but maybe it is that scare portion of it, you know?
But well,
Um,
see now it's always posed a new problem, and when we're talking about this now, that gets my mind going for next October.
mm,
Is that now, where we live at now, there's a lot of golf carts that ride around on our street or
mm,
people walking, but the majority of it is cars. So I want to, I love that whole, what happened during COVID was that a lot of these haunts couldn't open up. So they came up with drive-through haunts, and most of them were just failures, but it was something different.
right.
And this goes back to previous episodes, is like, just looking at things different. So like now my mind's going, of course, like I'd like to have things that are as um, different than what they sell on the market.
Right.
Not only does it help out my family because it doesn't cost as much buying something that's pre-made, but just being a little bit different and not being like the stuff that everybody else has.
Sure.
Because you want to give that nice, creepy, eerie feeling to the people as they're passing your yard. So, but we'll use some of the props that are pre-made, that will pop up, that are sensor activated. So, I do want to. I want to scare people just while they're driving by. Like,
Right. Right.
to be just kind of off kiltered, or if it's just one little thing that kind of pops out in the in the foreground, where it's like, did that move? Because I don't see it now. So,
Yeah.
it gets my mind going now with how can I mess with people, even more, So,
Yeah.
um,
No,
but
it's
yeah, it's a
interesting.
totally different feel with Christmas. I mean, Christmas is definitely, it's an overlay,
Mhm.
and it's a time for people to feel happy. I get happy when I see Halloween decorations, but
Same.
most
Yeah.
people don't.
Yeah, no, that's well, I guess, and it's also there's something about the variety, like the fact that Halloween can encompass zombies and mummies and pirates and aliens, and like you sort of have a larger palette to pull from as opposed to all the Christmas. You know, I mean, I wish Krampus would catch on a little bit more here because that's you can have your Halloween at
I would
Christmas. You know?
love some freaky gingerbread men. Just
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, and it's great, like, you know, the whole Nightmare Before Christmas, like that's an awesome, that whole franchise. I mean, the everything that's come out of that, not only the movie, but the Haunted Mansion overlay and all that you know, it's cool to see that mashup, you know.
mhm.
Um, well, before we say goodbye on this episode, you are one third of a podcast, which I am a subscriber to and enjoy. And I would just describe it as, you know, Southern Maryland mouth sounds if you're into the ASMR but you and some buddies do a cool podcast. Can you tell me a little bit about just pitch it first, but then sort of how did it come about?
Yeah. So the podcast is called Meats of the Round Table. That's spelled MEATS.
Right.
And it's about this three beefy bone boys. We've been friends since high school.
Okay.
So there's three of us, and so it came about a couple years ago. We noticed that every time we were on the phone, all we were doing was talking about what we had eaten the week prior. Like
Right.
it was in detail. And most of these conversations were happening at 6:15 in the morning on the way into work, and it's like, and that's a horrible way to start off your day, of like thinking about different ways that you can cook
Oh
oysters
yeah.
and stuff like that. But so my mouth would be salivating as my friend Jamie or John's talking about this, and I'm telling them something, and I love describing food. I'm not good with my words, as you know, but I try to be. So if I can take someone into that experience, right? Like I can tell you what it was like. I remember when I was a child and we were in Disney World, and it was time for us all to eat. It was, my extended family was with us, and my brother was complaining because he didn't want to eat there. They didn't have a grilled cheese sandwich, but they had a hot dog, and he didn't want to eat this hot dog.
Right.
And he said the hot dog didn't taste right. And I remember that taste of that hot dog. I remember that it was cool in that restaurant we were eating in Disney World. I remember the music that was playing in the background. It was that experience. It's the same thing with performing, right?
Sure.
So I love describing food, and when I talk about it to people, friends and family were just saying, "Wow, like I can taste it,"
Yeah.
So we decided, like, what if we try this? You know, we're 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 big boys that are in our 40s. We're all the same age, and why not? I think that's just something you do when you're in your 40s. You start a podcast. So
Uh,
yeah, so we decided to do it, and anyway, so the podcast is about it's kind of just taking you along our journey. So like yours is, it's like someone like a fly on the wall.
okay.
We're just taking you through our journey. However, we want some kind of positive twist to be on it. So we want to, bring recognition to these amazing restaurants that are in Southern Maryland.
Mhm.
And sometimes we go out of the area, like, we just finished our first season. In season two, I know we'll be going to different areas that aren't too far away, but not in Southern Maryland.
Right.
So we want to draw business to these mom and pop, shops, the ones that you might see on like Triple D, where the outside isn't very appealing, but the inside, the food that they're creating, you can taste the love. You can, so it's just us taking you on the journey. And it wasn't, we wanted the slurps and the crunches to be in there, but we didn't realize that people actually enjoyed it.
Right. Right.
I mean, there's two people, I didn't know at the time when we started that ASMR was a real thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, we had some people that absolutely were disgusted by it. However, they kept listening. It's like, it's going to get worse.
Oh man, that's
Yeah,
fun
so
feedback.
that's kind of been fun. We recorded last night, and Shannon was listening to it, after it had been edited, and she's like, yeah, you guys, that chicken was, I could taste how crunchy it was,
That's cool.
Sometimes it might be a little overwhelming, but we want to take you guys on this journey, and if we can do some good by helping out these small businesses, and that's a
Yeah.
great thing.
No,
So
it's it's awesome. I love it.
yeah,
And I mean, yeah, the only recommendation I have for folks is do not listen when you're hungry because it you guys do a great job of that, of sort of
thank you.
in such a weird, I'm used to podcasts that will paint a visual picture, right? Like I'm just driving down the road listening to it, but someone is good enough at describing a visual thing. But it's really fascinating to have a podcast convey taste and smell, and it's cool. Like it's a different kind of thing. So I definitely think folks should take a listen if any of this sounds the least bit interesting, or even just sort of popping in and be like, "What's up with this?" Guys eating fried chicken and pulled pork sandwiches. Like, how does that a podcast? Like, just give it a listen. I think you'll enjoy it.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's fun. It's a passion project. So
Sure. Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, yeah. So be sure wherever you get your podcasts on all the platforms. I'm sure you can search for Meats of the Round Table, and you'll find Brian as one of the folks on there. Listen, we should do this again, but it was awesome to have you here. So I really appreciate you coming on the podcast of the Impossible. And that's going to do it for this episode, though. So for more of my public shows and social media and special projects, you can head on over to oftheimpossible.com. Big thanks to Brian Garner for being here. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.